Welcome everyone to our 4th International Women's Week Women Angel Investor Breakfast hosted by the Capital Angel Network and Invest Ottawa. We are thrilled to be back with you for our 2nd day of International Women's Week. Thank you to everyone who joined us for the F Factor yesterday. And of course, you would have heard from the 2 amazing leaders that I am just about to introduce. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather virtually is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. We are very grateful to have the opportunity to be present in this territory and come together today as a regional and national community. Further, I want to respect and affirm the inherent treaty rights of all Indigenous peoples across this land. We recognize the contributions of the Métis, Inuit, and all Indigenous peoples have and continue to make in both shaping and strengthening this community and our country as a whole. It's now my great pleasure to introduce 2 good friends, collaborators, and leaders in our community who, for most of you on this call, will require no introduction. Jennifer Francis, Chair of the Capital Angel Network, co-founder of SheBoot, advisor, investor, tech executive, and a director of the board of Invest Ottawa. Julia Elvidge, Director of the Capital Angel Network, SheBoot co-founder, tech executive, investor, and advisor with us at Invest Ottawa to share their opening remarks on why it is so important that you are with us today and why they are passionate about this initiative. Jennifer and Julia, over to you.
Great, thank you, Sonia, and welcome to the Invest Ottawa Capital Angel Network Angel Breakfast. It's so exciting to have so many of you here. This is our 4th annual breakfast, and it's part of an initiative to increase the inclusivity of funding for entrepreneurs, particularly women entrepreneurs. If you were at the event yesterday, you would have heard, and you'll hear it again today, that the vast majority of funding does go to male entrepreneurs. About 2 to 2.5% of VC funding goes to women-founded companies. And our goal is to change that. And the 2 prongs of changing that are getting more women funders at the table, as we know that more women funders helps women founders get funded. And the second part of that is to work with women founders on getting them investment ready to pitch, and ready to pitch to both women and men, as you will still be pitching to an all-male room at some point in your fundraising journey. So it's really exciting to have so many of you here. Since we've started this initiative, we have greatly increased the number of women angels in Ottawa, and we have increased the number of women founders who have been funded in Ottawa. So it's been exciting to be on this journey, and you will hear from some of those founders and funders at the panel with Julia.
Excellent. And I really am so happy to see so many of the SheBoot investors showing up and listening in again today. I checked your names on the list, and thank you for telling your friends about this. Excuse me. I'm so happy to be here. I mean, I started investing in 2019 and joined the Capital Angel Network. And even then, the ratio of women to men in angel investing was so low. And what we've seen, and I really appreciate everything Jennifer is doing and Sonia is doing, is we've seen a huge change over the last couple of years to more and more women wanting to know more about angel investing and interested in what the impact is. And I really hope to do more of that and hear more of that when we do the panel later on today. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you everyone for coming today to hear more about angel investing.
Thank you both so much. And with that, we are now going to kick off with our opening keynote fireside chat. I am thrilled to welcome Michelle Scarborough, Managing Partner, Women in Technology Venture Fund with BDC and Kaufman Fellow Class of 26. Michelle, it is great to have you back with us. Thank you for being a part of today.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Sonia. And I have to say that, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm so tired of these Zoom things. I really want to see you all face to face in person as opposed to virtually. But, we'll start here and we'll move to in person very soon, I hope.
Well, and as you said, it's sort of like coming home. And so we're very excited to welcome you back to the Capitol. And in fact, I was thinking back as we were chit-chatting leading up to today, I had the great pleasure of meeting you for the first time in 2008. Seems like moons ago, and our paths have crisscrossed on so many occasions because you are so passionate about so many of the shared objectives that we have. And it is like coming home. I know you feel like an Ottawan, even though I know you're from out west. I think it would be great to chat with those that are joining us today a little bit about your journey, how you got to where you are, beginning with your role way back, you know, in those early days when you were with us at Invest Ottawa, formerly Oakry.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, sometimes I don't know how I got here because I did not take the direct path. Lots of my colleagues have been, you know, investment bankers, and then they went into private equity, and then they switched into venture, and it's just been a nice fairy tale. I did not do that. I started as an entrepreneur. I then, when I sold one of my companies, I went and worked for one of my investors who really was the person that taught me how to be an investor. So every time he put $1 into something, he showed me that I needed to put $1 into something as well. So kind of like teaching your kids. I was, you know, in my early 30s, didn't know what I was doing. And he was like, okay, so I'm going to write a $10 million check and you're going to write a $1 million check, or maybe a $2 million check. But it was that kind of, I guess, education that got my muscles going around investing and working with entrepreneurs. And that's what I really loved. So when I moved to Ottawa, followed a guy, don't shoot the messenger. It all worked out. It was fine. But when I moved to Ottawa, I was still working in Vancouver. I really didn't know what Ottawa was all about, frankly. I knew it had a big tech scene. I knew there was stuff going on, but it was at a time in the market, as you know, 2008, 2009, where kind of the market had fallen apart and we didn't know what was going on. So that's when I kind of hooked up with Jeff Dale and Ken Lawless and Cheryl Holden and a bunch of those people, and started digging into the Ottawa tech scene and getting involved. And that was sort of how Oakry became part of the Regional Innovation Center network. And I know people probably don't know this, but you know, our business model for what is now Invest Ottawa, the incubation facility, the accelerator facility, and within Invest Ottawa, really that business model was what formed a lot of what the RICs do in Ontario today, and a lot of what the you know, what you see at Mars and what you see at Communitech, a lot of that kind of spun out of that. So it was really Ottawa born and bred, with a whole bunch of people around the table from the tech sector at that time that really drove that and really got that going. And we did tons of work with companies in the Ottawa market at that time. But anyways, and the Capital Angel Network spun out of that too, which is like, I can't even believe what I'm seeing. It's so great to see Jennifer and the rest of you taking Capital Angel Network to the next level, because when we started it, there were, you know, kind of 10 of us, right? And it was, well, what are we going to invest in this week? It's like, really, we just wanted to do something and we knew we needed to start somewhere. So, but fast forward, you know, I left Ottawa to go back to Calgary. My dad had gotten sick, and so I needed to go home and kind of take care of family business for a while. And so when I went back to Calgary, I thought, you know, I still want to do investing. I had been an angel investor, you know, since I was in my early 30s. And at that time, there was nobody around the table. Nobody knew what angel investing was. Nobody knew what venture capital investing was. And nobody had told me that this was the path I was going to take. But when I went back to Calgary, I had the opportunity with a bunch of my friends to start up a couple of smaller funds, one of which was an angel fund, and the other was a much larger fund that was anchor tenanted by one of the largest oil and gas companies in the world. And it was as a result of those initiatives that led me into being an LP in a number of funds and a number of larger organizations, that when I really started to see that, you know, I was kind of the only woman at the table. And I had been noticing it through my career, but I hadn't really paid too much attention to it until those moments. And I thought, you know what, this is ridiculous. Like, come on, you know, I can't be the only person here. I knew how to, you know, talk to the room. But I learned because I had learned from others that had taught me earlier on, and I didn't see that opportunity being paid forward. And so when BDC came knocking and said, you know, we're thinking about doing something to support women entrepreneurs. We have a bold goal. Michael Denham was the CEO at the time, had a big vision of what he wanted the bank to do. But he said, we're really lacking in venture capital and we need somebody to come and change that. Would you take up the helm? And so I said, you know what? I could go down to the States and, run a big private equity fund, or I could do this. And I chose this. And I chose it because I knew that we needed to, just like Jennifer and Julia said, I knew we needed to change the game and I knew we needed to change the narrative. And the only way we were going to do that and really change culture from the bottom up is by actually putting our money where our mouth was and doing something and making an impact and showing that you could invest in women-led companies. Those companies could be super successful. They could exit at huge multiples, and that dollar that those women would make would be returned into the market. So we've seen that sort of start to repeat itself. I saw it as an angel, the impact that we can have through the fund that we're running right now and what's to come can be significantly greater. And so I thought, this is important work. It's, it's the right thing to do and it's the right time to do it. And so that's why I took up the helm. And so we've been investing ever since.
Amazing impact. And that choice, we talked a lot about how passionate you were about that choice in ignoring all the great opportunities that were coming to you in the US and doing this to drive more opportunity for women, which of course you're a role model and it's amazing. You have a very unique vantage point at BDC, given the leadership that you have and the career journey that you have charted. As we enter the third year of the pandemic, what sort of trends, challenges, or opportunities are you seeing across the investment landscape that you think those gathered here today really need to be aware of as they're starting to learn more and more about this opportunity?
Well, I think, the first thing we all agree on, I think, is that acceleration of technology and digitization of systems is, happening. We're in the digital age and everything is transforming at the same time that it's breaking down. So when you think about our systems, think about supply chain, things that are obvious, right? Supply chain, but also financial systems, our food security, our security in general. And we've got geopolitical things happening in the world. All of that is driving significantly greater adoption in technology to kind of redefine how we live and how we operate in the world. So it's the pandemic, but also the geopolitical stuff that we're facing right now is just accelerating what was already happening a couple of years ago, just, sort of limping along. Now we've seen it actually start, we're in the sprint. And what that's done is has accelerated innovation and adoption. So when we think about, the challenges and opportunities, we think about the challenges being, okay, so there's all this digital transformation happening all at once. Where, our lives are being completely changed, but at the same time, how do those companies that we rely on, the banks, the systems, how do they change? Because they're not quick adopters. So how do we bridge that gap and allow for that systematic change to take place? So that's the big challenge, but also the big opportunity, because if you look at what's, 3 years ago, did you think that you'd be using Uber Eats to buy food and bring it home for dinner? Did you think for a minute that you'd be using Shopify everywhere as the backbone to many, many companies that have now gone online to sell their goods and services, not just locally, but globally? So those are, some simple examples, but examples that are happening today. But you're also seeing it in things like HR. I was listening to the conversation about hiring people, moving people, paying for people in different jurisdictions. The world has truly become flat, and how we deal with human resources, how we deal with culture, retention, both retention, but also recruitment in a very, very hot market. What does that need to look like? And what are the tools and the technologies that are being created to deal with some of those complicated challenges, right? Plum.ai is an example. Nudge Rewards is another example of companies that are tackling some of those issues. Workflow automation is becoming huge. So when you're thinking about things you want to invest in, you're thinking about, so what is the long-term implication of this technology on that system change? And that's sort of how we look at how we make investments. But we're also seeing massive opportunities in healthcare, wellness. You know, I heard somebody use silver tech. Don't think that's appropriate word, but you know, whatever works for you. But you know, there's a lot of things, right, that are converging. There's Hi Mama, which is a company in Toronto that is dealing with issues related to parents dropping their kids off at the daycare, and how do you manage that, and how do you pay for that? So payment systems being embedded into everything is coming about. Clean tech and sustainability are going through the roof. Everybody's getting into that space. But what I'm really interested in seeing, and what I think is really cool, are new markets that are forming and circular economies that are forming at the same time. So what I mean by that is this: new markets are forming in the sense of, you know, blockchain is becoming a market unto itself. Autonomous driving is becoming a market unto itself. Wabi and some of these other big companies are just getting started. They're really seed stage businesses, but they are going to create new market opportunities and new markets. And then when we think about circular economy, we're seeing a lot of marketplaces develop based on e-commerce platforms. But what they're doing is they are taking something that is very local, and they're partnering, if you will, with other organizations, other companies that do something similar to expand the network effect of those businesses. So a lot of that is happening. Goody is an example of that in the home care space. Fable Homes, another example of companies that are doing that. Lufa Farms in Montreal, another example. And these are companies that are creating opportunities, not just for themselves to be a platform, but to grow that platform for others. And we're going to see a lot more of that as we think about local to global, and the automation and the optimization of local to global. So just those are just some examples. But I think, you know, we're coming of age, so to speak. But a lot more disruption to come. And I think what we're thinking about is how do we take advantage of the opportunity now? And many of these companies, by the way, are being led by women, which I think is, you know, an interesting data point in and of itself. But how do we take advantage of those opportunities now, particularly at the early stage, which is what we're talking about today, and giving them the fuel that they need, both from a capital perspective and from a people perspective, i.e. resources around the table with brain power that can help them iterate on things to get to that next level. So that's, I don't know if that answers your question.
Amazing. Oh, so I'm incredibly excited because I look at the upcoming panel with Julia and the founders that are there, and they are definitely leading in many of the sectors that they're working on, bringing forward those types of innovations. And SheBoot broadly is dedicated to helping get those women tech founders to that next level and get them investment ready. So it's going to be an amazing linkage in the next panel. Of course, we talked openly about the challenges with respect to the amount of funding that's going to women founders. And Jennifer noted the statistic that you will hear all through International Women's Week: less than 2.3% of all global venture capital going to women-led founding firms. How do we change the statistic? Capital is flowing immensely right now. There's a ton of capital, particularly at the later stages. What do you think it's going to take to change this statistic? You're helping to lead this charge from your role at BDC, but we know far more is needed.
Yeah, so, you know, like we're the largest institutional investor in Canada right now, focused on investing in women-led tech companies, but that's not enough. So there's that obvious. We need more institutional investors taking up the helm, and you see little bits of it coming, but it's still not sort of front and center. But you know, I'll tell you something. At the early stages, when we see companies, women-led companies specifically coming through the door, and I'm sure this is going to be addressed in the next panel. There's a couple things that are happening. One is there's just still a huge lack of confidence. When you are pitching your company, you have the energy around it. You have the passion to do it. That passion, that confidence needs to come through. And we need to be spending time with founders and frankly, their entire management teams, not just the founders and not just CEOs, but with the management team, to get them super confident in telling their story. It's just that piece would go a long way to helping them overcome some of the barriers, because when we look at the difference between men and women, men always go into the room confident. Or perception is confident, perceived as confident. So the confidence building is a big piece, and that flows into education. There is a real education that needs to perceived. You're right, Claudia. Education is also super key, because, you know, a lot of companies when they get started, and this is true of everybody, don't understand the difference between debt and equity. When do I need debt? When do I need equity? What is it used for? What's it going to be used for? And then how do I leverage it as I grow the company? Because you're going to need various different types at various different stages. And what types of vehicles do I want to use that are going to be important to me? So all of that education around the financing process, the aspects of financing related to the business and the stage of business you're in is super important. And we need to do that way earlier. So confidence building way earlier on, education way earlier on. And then as you think about, you know, sort of the other pieces that we look at, you know, we're looking for, and I'm looking around the room here, we're looking for role models that we can promote in the public domain and say, hey, you're 16 years old, you're 11 years old, you want to be an entrepreneur? Let me show you 5, 10, 25, 50 great entrepreneurs that have built really, really interesting, cool companies and are killing it in Canada and killing it globally. And then finally, the last part of that is that, you know, if we're going to change the narrative around dollars flowing into companies that are women-led, more women need to be investing in them at the BC table, at the angel table, and those women need to be helping them get a, you know, hand up as opposed to crushing. So we all need to be we frankly just all need to be working together and break down the silos to make sure that that the process becomes a bit more seamless as we kind of move, as companies move along the value chain.
Again, I'm so excited because I see so much of what you said baked into so much of the strategy that the Capital Angel Network is pursuing, that SheBoot is pursuing. And of course, the proof will be in the pudding when our panelists come forward and they can speak to some of the benefits and some of the impact of SheBoot and so many other initiatives. And there are many incredible women founder and women investor initiatives in different parts of the country, many of which I know you're involved in. Critical mass is key to driving change. Mm-hmm. We get so many questions, Michelle, about the BDC Women in Technology Venture Fund at Invest Ottawa. I know Nick is with me, and we are consistently fielding lots of questions. What would you like our audience to know? What would be the takeaways about the fund that you are leading, and what they need to know about it when they're ready, perhaps, to begin exploring that opportunity with you?
So, so when we started the fund, it was a $200 million allocation, and it was put into 3 buckets: direct investments into companies like some of the ones we're talking about today, indirect investments into some of the emerging manager funds where there were women in the GP, and then thirdly, investing in the ecosystem to start to build that sort of sustainable network, like what you're doing at SheBoot and other organizations across the country, but to try to build that sustainable network. You know, I think the big takeaway is that we've achieved on the objectives to get dollars deployed into the marketplace. We've invested in 35 companies to date. We've had 6 exits. We have 29 active companies remaining in the fund. But we are going to be, because the need is so great, and because we don't feel, we feel like we've made a bit of a dent, but we don't feel like we've actually like carved any kind of deep path. We are going to, we're spoiler alert, we're going to be standing up Fund 2 shortly. I think what's important for the audience to understand is that we are looking at the early stage. So we are investing at seed and Series A, a little bit Series B, but mostly seed and Series A. We are, don't let that get out, Jennifer.
Everybody's in the code of silence.
Everybody already knows it's like worst kept secret ever. But I think the big thing to know is that, look, we're investing seed and Series A. We are going to do more seed out of this next fund, because that is truly where there continues to be a gap. So that means more syndication with the angel groups, more, more kind of writing a bigger check perhaps into those earlier rounds to give companies a bit more runway than they would otherwise have. We still will want to see early traction in those businesses. So what I mean by that is we want to see first customer validation. We want to see that you've got your MVP sorted out. It's going to be lumpy, it's going to be bumpy, it's going to be messy, but we still want to see that, that technology piece is sorting itself out, that you're creating something that is unique to you and that has a competitive or potentially unfair competitive advantage in the market that you're going after, and that market is at size. So if you come to a fund, a venture fund, our fund, whatever fund, and you say my TAM is 100,000 people, it's not quite a venture backable business. But if you say my TAM is 100 million people, it's pretty big, but you get my drift with respect to scale. We want to see those kinds of companies. Our networks, our experience, the experience of the team is all wrapped around getting those companies accelerated. So we're going to do a lot more at seed, I guess is my point. Syndication more regularly with angels and angel groups, as well as early stage VCs. We have a number of we have tons of US VCs looking into the Canadian market as well, as you're already aware. We would like to have Canadian investors investing on the cap tables of these companies early on, because again, if we want to think about the virtuous cycle or the flywheel only gets going with that dollar being recirculated into the economy if everybody participates. So that's sort of our MO a little bit. But we want to see those companies that are going to have that technology, they own it, or they own the IP, you know what I mean, the know-how, the trade secrets, to be able to take that company into a global marketplace. We're technology agnostic, so we're a generalist fund, which makes it both a little bit easier and a whole lot harder when you're thinking about returns. We have to return these funds. This is not a freebie. We don't get a get out of jail free card. We have to return these funds. This is not our capital, and we are here to generate returns. And it's even more important that we do that because everybody's eyeballs are on, can women-led funds investing in women-led technology companies be successful? And I'll be damned if I'm going to sit here and say no.
Yeah.
Super competitive right here, but I'm not going to let that can't happen. So in order to do that well, we need kind of everybody in the going down the field at the same time.
Amazing. Could not agree more. Could not agree more. We have about 8 minutes left. Natalie has a question with respect to how IP rights such as patents are a factor in seed and Series A funding determinations. Michelle.
It kind of depends. We've invested in companies that have IP associated with the universities. Oftentimes we have a conversation in due diligence with the universities about what is reasonable, what is not reasonable, what are the buyout opportunities for the IP. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but really it's just a matter of looking at what your market is that you're going after. How does that intellectual property help you maintain and grow a moat around your technology so that you can kind of keep your competitive advantage? And then does it help you, hinder you? So we're looking for those kinds of triggers, but as long as you've got a fairly defined path and you're continuing to create intellectual property around that, so you do create that moat opportunity for you, then it's just a matter of how we figure out what the math looks like. If your company is great and your company is booming and your intellectual property is awesome, then you're going to get financed. Anyways, won't matter.
Nick and our venture team talk a lot about moats. This is excellent. I see so much alignment. Lily is asking a question. I heard about the 100K and the 100 million. I live in the Arctic where our population is 10K and the entire territory spanning several time zones, population of 40,000. When I heard what you just said, I'm tempted to fill the gap and start a Northern Venture Fund for us. Can I get help? Do you have any guidance for Lily looking at that great big objective, which is awesome?
Wow, that's awesome, Lily. So I think, Lily, the first thing I would do is find out whether or not you want to be a fund manager. Being a fund manager is very different from organizing an angel group and trying to invest in companies locally. So what I might do is maybe walk before I run, start an angel group up there, do some investing into companies in the local region, maybe do some syndication with folks across the angel landscape that you may know. I mean, you now know the Capital Angel Network folks here, so there's a direct linkage. Maybe do some syndications with them first, get your feet wet, and then determine from there whether or not you want to build a fund. There's lots of ways to start a fund and build a fund, but there's a lot of management involved in the business of fund management, and sometimes you have to really want to do that back part. Lots of people want to do the front part, make investments, work with the founders, build the companies. All that is like awesome, but you have to. The back part is
heavy lifting.
Talk about it here, but.
Well, we have 5 minutes left, and I certainly want to hear from you, Michelle, on why you think it is so important for more women angels to be a part of the investment community. We have many people gathered today. Our goal is to help the Capital Angel Network recruit more women angels into that powerful network and hopefully become a part of SheBoot. Why is that so important from your perspective?
Well, for the obvious reasons that there's a lot of women founding companies that are going to need a lot of women investors helping them to build those companies. And I don't say that with any disrespect to our what I call our fortifiers, the guys in the room that also help. It does take a village to build a company, and it's meaningful to have the diversity of thought, skill, gender, other around the table as you're thinking about building the company, and frankly, as you're investing in companies. You want the diversity around the table when you're making an investment decision. It's as important. But when we think about things like transfer of wealth, we think about the other half of the buying market, the other 50% of the faces of consumers. They're women and other diverse groups. So we want to make sure that you're playing that important role. And that I think is why it's so important. And I don't discount other diverse groups as well, because it's as important to have that diversity at the table. But it is super important. And when you see like equals like across the boardroom table, what we often see is those women founders just kind of go, oh, okay, she's gonna get it. She's gonna get it. They may not have a clue, but she's gonna get it. We also talk differently. We also are more collaborative in our approach. That some of those things do make a big difference when you're sitting across the boardroom table from people. And there are nuances and they're nonverbal cues, but they're as important as the verbal cues that you give to a founder. And the difference of opinion in terms of like you're managing 2 kids at home and you're trying to build a $100 million, $200 million company. Different things going on in your head sometimes, right? It's helpful to have investors around the table that you can talk about that stuff too.
And a level of understanding the moment that you walk in. Amazing. Well, we are coming up on our last couple of minutes. Is there one key takeaway you would like to leave with everyone who's gathered with us today after this fantastic and insightful interview?
Well, thanks for that, Sonia. I hope it was insightful.
It was amazing.
I think the one takeaway is that we're kind of at the very beginning of what can be an enormous movement in Canada. And Canada has been leading on a bunch of levels, leading on a bunch of fronts in the technology space. Where we have a huge opportunity to lead is in this space, is in this closing the gender gap, creating equality at all levels of the technology sector and at all levels of the equity investing, I'll call it asset class. But it is going to require a bit of a united front to do so, and collaboration. We're going to have a very large platform with the second fund, and that platform will make this the largest fund in the world doing what it's doing. But it won't work unless we are working with everybody in the market to make it happen. So the takeaway is, if you're making investments in women-led companies, you're looking for syndication, or you want to figure out how to iterate on how we do this better, I want to know, and the team wants to know, because we want to figure out how to make this what everybody in the world looks to as the golden best in class. This is how it's done. But again, we're at the early stages, so there's only 11 of us. We need many, many, many more in order to make it happen. And once we do that, and once we see that flywheel start, then we'll know we've been successful.
Amazing. There are many champions and leaders on this call. We are all going to rally. We all have our call to action. So consider this your extended team, Michelle. Sincere thanks for taking the time with us. I know it's early, and we really appreciate all the actionable insight you just shared. It was a great start to the day. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks, everybody.
And big thank you to everyone who's joining us. It's far broader than just Ottawa, Portland. I know Toronto. We have Claudia joining us from NACO. Just amazing to see that reach. So thank you all for being a part of today. It's now my great pleasure to hand over to my friend Julia, who's going to lead our panel discussion. That will be followed by an Angel Investing Education session from Jennifer. And then we're going to close off with an incredible keynote with my friend Vanjula from CBC and Judy Hess, the CEO of Copperleaf. Over to you, Julia.
Thank you, Sonia. And thank you, Michelle. A great talk. It was wonderful to see that the SheBoot is really meeting some of those needs that you're talking about, helping women in terms of the confidence and of their pitch, and how they talk about their story, and giving them more background on the different types of vehicles for investing. And so I'm hoping we're making a difference and producing great candidates for the BDC fund going forward. So today we get to talk to some of these founders, women founders, and investors. And I want to say that, I come out of tech. I have 35 years in tech. I lived in a male-dominated world. There really didn't change that much over those 35 years. There was change, but women in tech, it's still about 25% of the tech jobs. And when I formally retired in 2017, I started working with entrepreneurs in Invest Ottawa, and I realized, supporting women in tech was an important thing to change the world of tech, to get more leaders running companies and defining new ways that will help keep more women in tech. Because if we have more women in tech, we actually have more women that are better paid, which means we have a better economy in general. And so I'm still pushing for that. I was shocking to see, once I started getting into angel investing, that I was right back in a boys club again. And it's changing rapidly. I love to see it changing rapidly. But I wanted to talk a little bit more today, and listening to these women founders about their journeys. I want them to talk about their stories and hardships as well, but also their successes, and hear a little bit about why women investors even bother investing as well. So today I'm joined by Natalie Rafoul. Natalie is the co-CEO of Fortress Legal, and also a partner of Briand Rafoul, a local patent firm. We also have Victoria. No, I'll do Sarah next. Sarah joining us. Sarah Sedgman is the founder and CEO of Learn Experts. Sarah will talk about her journey over the last little bit in a second. And next one, Samantha. And Victoria Shu is she likes to think of herself as first and foremost a women investor, right? An angel investor, but she is also here representing her firm. She is a co-founder and CEO of Clean Inotech. Yeah, sorry. I was trying to read your writing behind you. So, and then finally, Terry joining us. Terry is the CEO of iHealth OX, and she is also a She-Boot investor. So, you know, a serial entrepreneur and now moving into the investment process. So we have a great group of women here to talk about their experiences. And I'm going to, first of all, just get them to introduce themselves a bit more and start with you, Natalie. You know, you're a founder of a tech firm. You got funding in 2021. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about you and your journey and your business. First of all, we'll get to your journey afterwards, you and your business. You're on mute still.
I'm muted, sorry. So Fortress.legal is really an intangible management system that helps companies, innovative, small, medium-sized companies have line of sight on their corporate data, their IP, their contracts, and really provides a multi-sided platform so those companies can interact not only with their legal advisors, but their investors, maybe folks at BDC and others. So it's really a multi-sided platform. And we've already got our first release out in the market. We have companies on the platform. We also have law firms that are collaborating with companies on the platform, which is exciting. And as Julia mentioned, we went through actually the pre-accelerator program at Invest Ottawa, which was fantastic. So shout out to that. And then through the She-Boot program this past fall, and that was instrumental in us being able to raise very quickly in a matter of weeks. I'd say 3 to 4 weeks we raised, and it was, you know, the support of the She-Boot group was invaluable. So
it sounds too easy though, Natalie. Be careful there. So it's very unusual to do it in 3 to 4 weeks. So we'll talk about the other backgrounds. But anything else you want to add? Okay, Sarah, similar. Can you introduce yourself and your business?
Yes, I'm Sarah Sedgman and CEO of Learn Experts. I spent 22 years in tech. I started my career as a technical writer, course developer, and over time became chief customer officer and ran some really large education businesses, so up to $80 million global training businesses. I'm also an exec advisor at Invest Ottawa, but I participated in the pre-accelerator, which is where I met Julia and a number of people, and it was an excellent program. In 2019, I decided to leave the comforts of the corporate world in the executive space and start Learn Experts because I had lived a problem through my whole career around developing content for training. Still today, it's a very slow manual process. So I decided it was time to solve the problem the right way, not how I saw it solved in the industry. And we've created a platform and a system that is AI enabled, and it automates developing content for training. So it helps users develop training within days instead of months. And about this time last year, I thought I would bootstrap my business. But people were getting so excited when we were showing them the platform, I thought we better accelerate. So I decided to fundraise, and I know we'll get into the journey of that. But I had a lot of help from female angel investors, and we successfully.
Okay, you cut out briefly. Okay, Sarah's just frozen. It's just Sarah right now, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to let Sarah come back. She was just about done. So, she was just getting into the journey. So we'll come back to that. Victoria, then, sorry, Sarah, you cut out at the end, but we'll come back to the journey part and fill that in, okay?
No problem.
Victoria, as I said, thinks of herself first as an angel investor, but more recently has taken on this role as a founder. Just tell us more about yourself, Victoria, and your company.
Sure. Well, actually, I still just started as an investor with my current startup as well. Long story short, actually, I studied biomedical engineering and found myself would be a very terrible scientist because I'm not able to really sustain so-called immortal cancer cells in the lab. So decided, no, not the right thing for me. And after graduation, I joined the industry and started my career with the telecom industry. Obviously, software bugs are easy to deal with, not the real bugs. Stayed there for over 10 years, but then I went back to graduate school and explore a little bit because I felt like I probably should do more to impact the world in a better way. And there are just too many bright minds in the telecom industry anyway. They don't need me. So then I started to support startups sort of with others and other people, other organizations' money, because I don't want to risk my own money with it before I'm ready for that. So formally started my own angel investing with Ken a little over 2 years ago. And well, my own company, CleanOgen, well, that's actually a long story. It took 5 years in the making. So I started as an investor, as I mentioned, but then now I'm leading it and raising the seed round to execute a paid pilot, which will be the first of its kind in the world for a heat to hydrogen system in a cement plant here in Ontario.
Incredible. Yeah. Thank you, Victoria. So we've done legal tech, ed tech, clean tech, and now health tech with Terry. And Terry is a serial entrepreneur that just recently completed her first investment as a Shibu investor. Terry, could you tell us more about yourself, your business, just as an introduction?
Yes, and I do want to thank all the incredible women today for putting this on. It's awesome. So my journey has been 20 years. Again, serial entrepreneur in the mental health space, right? Providing mental health and well-being benefits to organizations, company, and people, right? So for me, my passion is I want to live in a world where mental health and well-being matter. My second one is that I really want to increase, diversity, inclusion, belonging for women in the business community. And I think how we do this is through education. One for me, the very first one is like, how do we, teach women to build wealth? And I think the second one is how do we teach women to be transactional in the business community and what that means to us, right? So yeah, so that's about me and my passion.
Great. Thank you, Terry. So let's get into it a little bit. And Sarah, I cut you off earlier, so I'll let you go and talk a little bit more about your journey. Especially your funding journey and what that was like. And this happened in 2021 and how could it be improved going forward as well too?
Am I coming through okay now?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay. The internet pauses at the worst times. Yeah, so as I was mentioning, around this time last year, I thought I was going to bootstrap the business. But we started to show our prototype to a number of companies, and some of them were large, like OpenText, 3DN, Workday, and people were getting really excited about the solution and saying to us, if that works the way you're showing, we would pay for it right now because we could get value from it. So I called Julia and Jennifer and I said, I think I'm going to fundraise. I haven't done this before, so I need help. And the very first thing that they suggested was, I had been working on my pitch deck for quite a while, and they said, let's practice your pitch deck. So I got in front of Julia and Jennifer and Sandra, who's on the call, I think, and Victoria, and also a number of male investors, and I practiced and I got a lot of great feedback. And I also was able to join some of the meet and greet for Capital Angel Network and Maple Leaf Angels. And that gave me a chance to network and meet some angel investors ahead of time in a really informal, comfortable setting. So the one thing I would say is, you know, if you are an angel investor thinking about it, coming to events like that or events like this are really important to connect with the founders in a comfortable space. Certainly as the pitches go on and I was pitching, I was pretty nervous. So it was nice to be able to do meet and greets where I could talk to people and ask questions ahead of time. And then when I showed up to the online calls for the pitch, I could see familiar faces in the room. I did snowball. I started with Capital Angel Network. And then Nolan, who at the time was exec director, started introducing me to other networks. I had chatted with Julia and she said, Sarah, I'll help you any way possible. And so she came with me to all of those angel networks to pitch. And I will say, Michelle talked about confidence. I just needed to show up and be confident. That's what I told myself each time before pitching, because in an online environment, you can't see faces all the time, and the different angel groups either use video or they don't. So the practice pitching really helped me to just show up, be confident about my pitch, and do the best I could, no matter who was in the audience. But it did make a difference when I showed up to Capital Angel Network and Maple Leaf Angels, Equation Angels, where there were a lot of women faces. I felt more comfortable for sure. I don't know why, but the women tended to also turn on their video. So often I could see the women in the room, and that helped me just relax a little bit and really give it a good pitch. So some of those things were helpful along my journey. I also was introduced to Mars, and Snida took a big role in helping me navigate through Mars, which was fantastic. And I set out to raise $750K and raised up to $2 million in interest and closed at $1.25 million. And I purposely held spots open for women investors. So for me, it was really important to have women investors as part of my portfolio. And in the end, as the round was closing, I held some spaces open for some of those women in different places around Ontario to be able to invest. So I'll stop there because I could keep going probably forever. But all to say, I really felt supported through my fundraise by several of the women on this call, including you, Sonia, and also seeing those familiar faces at the different angel groups.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm going to switch to Terry now and to expand on that, because, you know, talking about, you know, leaving spaces open for women, this is something you did intentionally as well too, Terry, I understand.
Yeah, I think I've told you guys most of my journey story, and I always kind of say it was my naivety, right, that kind of got me through this and these opportunities. So I was blessed. And I think there was a moment when I was sitting on my second or third company that was truly an investor. I had a board, and I had a board member, actually male, say to me, you know, because I wanted women on the board, because I looked around and said, oh, my board's all men. How did this happen? Right. And this is where that's not what I wanted, you know, but it happened. And I'm like, you know, that was going to open some seats for some women. And I had a male director say to me that a woman needs to write a check for $150,000 to get on this board. And so that became my first mission. That was my second or my third mission, I think, on my journey of what I didn't know. That's how I describe it, right? That I was like, I'm going to change this right away, right? And, you know, I did with my shareholders agreement and said, nope, they're my founder seats. I get to nominate, and it's not about cash. But that was kind of my journey of learning this difference between, because I was so naive, because I was so successful in my original, you know, my grassroots business, you know, 20 million, I didn't know what I didn't know about investment and the difference between the gender or different roles that were happening. I was kind of naive to it. That was a moment, aha, for me, that like, something had changed, right? That I needed to make a difference, and I could, having influence on a board and a company.
So you actually, this 150,000 you're talking about was something that had been set and written into a shareholders agreement, or what?
No, it was
that
just,
far?
so
Yeah.
how it kind of started was different, like basically around my shareholder agreement, right? Because I had this where I could actually, as a founder, fill the seats how I wanted, right? And I didn't need board approval, right? So it was just up to Series A, right? And so when it came in, because I talked about, I was going to bring some other women on, I had a male director say to me, not unless they can write a check for $150,000. And so you heard my first, one of my goals is to help, women build wealth. And so for there, though, that was a really big opening, like awakening for me, that there's this gender difference sitting at boards and what that influence could mean long-term, right? And what people's, how males, and this isn't against, just their formulas and what they think works, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right in their mind. So very aha moment for me.
And I have the stat in front of me. Women comprise 8% of the board of directors in Canadian tech. 8% only. That needs to change, right? Tech is way behind where it should be from a board of directors standpoint and gender equality. Thank you, Terry. So before we go to Victoria, because I'm looking forward to hearing about the investor journey that for Victoria, but Natalie, tell me about SheBoot and how that experience was worked for you and Jen, your co-founder and co-CEO. What was instrumental there? What were the things you learned that you wish all founders could learn? I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, I think the experience was great. I mean, I think having so many women involved. I mean, I think it's all told, 50 women, and so there's the weekly pitches, which Sarah talked about, which are really important. You've got to practice, you've got to build up that confidence, and so having every week different folks that you're pitching in front of, and men were included in that as well, but it always felt like a safe place, and you got really direct feedback that you felt good receiving. I think most women felt like, okay, this is very frank, but I want to hear it. And I'm not sure that the men would even necessarily give you that same feedback. It was very honest, and it was wonderful. And then also working, each of us were paired with an advisor. And we built a fantastic relationship with our specific company advisor. So we really felt supported in that, which was great. So to the other founders, I would say, you really want to dig in and, really taken full advantage of the process. I mean, every week of the 6-week boot camp, although it starts much earlier than that, you learn so much. Also, as founders, we came together and, really rallied as well. But I think you just felt so supported, and it just felt like a safe place to get feedback, which I don't know. I mean, I've been in, just a little bit about my background. I come from an electrical engineering background, did work at Nortel like so many, and got into patent law, very male dominated field. I've always been in a male dominated environment. And I can tell you that, that sometimes I love the guys, and there are a lot of supporters out there, and my career is thanks to male supporters, but they're not always going to give you that same honest feedback. So that's sort of what I would say about that. So.
Excellent. And that network of women is pretty powerful as well too. The cohort.
Cohort, exactly. It's continued, and afterwards we'd have a glass of wine and sort of talk about some of the advisor feedback. And, it just creates a camaraderie that's going to grow with us. And so now the nice thing about coming into SheBoot is everyone, I think, was looking to raise, and so we were all feeling that same pain and those same challenges, along with all the other business challenges we're having. But we were all coming at it at the same point. So. It was just a great camp for us.
That's great. Okay. Now switching over and talking about the investor perspective, Victoria, you like me, you're pretty new to angel investing, but I also know that you just dove right in and got into it right away. So tell what brought you to investing. What do you love about it? Just tell us a little bit more.
Yeah. I would say, yeah. So actually, I probably started anyway in kind of informal investing way back earlier, because I would think that fundamentally that everyone has a power. It's equal power here that like every vote counts in a democracy, and every cent counts for everyone. That we literally can vote with every cent we have. Either it's through consumption, through our purchasing power, or through our investing. So if I'm in the position to invest, why waste that power? That's basically the idea behind it. And then, but formal investing, I did just with Ken for just over 2 years. And I would say, yeah, it's a great experience because with Ken, it's really structured, and a lot of other fellow angel investors would really be there to provide complementary view and skill set that I don't have. So yeah, it's I think it's a great experience for me, and also I'm actually, how do I say that? This is a fundamental power that I have. I don't want to waste it, right? Otherwise, I feel like I'm not voting for my MP. Why not? Right?
So why? I mean, you said, you know, before you did informal investing, and now you do formal investing. What's the difference? What explain to people what you see the difference is?
Sure. So informal is just like friends, and typically family and friends that they're trying to do some business, and then we would, you know, just lend some money or that sort of thing. There's no structural sort of due diligence behind it, but more through personal connections. I think that happened quite often in many cases, and because for startups, actually the first money they get is typically through this way, right? Family and friends round, which we are not addressing here. So yeah, but that experience, also I had some great return on some of them, and also lost some money on some of them, but it's a great learning experience, and there's no minimum requirement of that. Actually, it's one of the attendee, Jasmine, asked that probably that's one thing that you can try. You know, there's no technically there's no regulation on that, right? For family and friends around.
Yes,
but it's a good starting point, and you got intimate knowledge about what's going on there to start a business. And yeah, I would say I started from there first, and for a long time, because I as I said, I would think that if I have the power, why I waste it?
So, I mean, and Jasmine had a slightly different question too, further back. What is being done to lower the barrier to entry for angel investing? Personally, I will likely not qualify for several years, but I do have the means and desires to support early stage women-led companies. Are there any micro investing opportunities? Do you want to try and tackle that one, Victoria?
There are some, like I remember CEO is one of them.
CEO is it's not really investment. You're
yeah, it's kind of donation. It's a kind of donation. I would say through your family, friends around, your family and friends, to do some investing. You don't need to invest like $25 or whatsoever. Even $2,500 will work well. That the founders would appreciate. Yeah, if you are not qualified, I don't think there's ways to do that, because there's a regulation on that. You can't do that on your own, and they invest. Well, the founder are not they cannot accept your money either if you are not qualified, right? So
for the angel investing base,
for formal, but family friends is another story. That you can definitely do that.
So for angel investing, I'll just add that, I mean, 25K is a typical check size. It can range a lot as well, but I'm just going to throw out the 25,000. But there are opportunities, and Sheboot is one of them, where you can invest at that $10,000 range and be part of what is a special purpose vehicle for Sheboot investors. And so that we make it friendly money, because that's one of the objectives is to make sure that we're as friendly as possible while still being an investment, right? Not a donation.
That's right.
For female founders and figuring out a way around that.
But even when we lower the entrance, you still need to be qualified for angel investor because there's regulation for this.
Yes, for angel investing, you have to be an accredited investor. And Jennifer, can you throw a link down on what an accredited investor is? Or you're going to talk about it in a second, probably too. Yep. Okay. Sorry. Excellent. So I just want to throw out, as we're churning through the time, 6 minutes left. Going back to and throwing it out to the group, Sarah, Natalie, Terry, and Victoria. What would you as founders request from women? And I'm going to add from men to that. So we're talking about. I like Michelle's term, the fortifiers, as men are fortifier to this women's ecosystem. What would you request from women to navigate the angel investment system better? What other components can women and men bring to support you better? Anybody?
Well, I really resonated with like Sarah's comment about, getting to know investors. I think that's so important, getting out there in the community, going to the events, because it's like, getting a face to the name and having those conversations so that they know also your background. Because so often you hear investors say, I invested in the person, I invested in that team. And so getting to know what kind of a female powerhouse you are, what you've done in your background, what you're bringing to the table, what's your leadership style. I know some of the investors really wanted to understand, like, what's your leadership style and really understand you with, your personality. I think making the rounds is huge in advance and getting to know folks and then finding who you're going to, because I think investors, for women who are thinking about it too, friendships are created through investing and people really develop great relationships. And people want to work in companies with people that they enjoy also. You're looking for, lots of opportunity to, I don't know, someone can add to that, but I think that's important to get to know folks.
Good. Terry, yeah?
Yeah, I think for me, and it was really, our keynote speaker, Michelle, talking about this, that's really important is education. I think that I've told you guys about my story was like, I went from this bricks and mortar entrepreneur successful to a tech entrepreneur taking people's money, right? And I think one of the most valuable pieces of information, because I embarrassed myself on my first pitch in New York, was that I had a great mentor that said, stop this. You have made $500 million of sales in 20 years. Get up and say, this is what I'm building. I've been in the industry. I've done this, and drop your mic. And he also said, sit down. And I want you to learn your cap table. I want you to know your numbers like you'll never know them before. That was education to me. So it was like, that's what I did. I learned a cap table dilution. I learned like, what does it mean? And like my dollars and cents, what's my revenue? What's my EBITDA? What's my debt? Right. And when I started talking that language, and which has changed me now to become a really good CEO, right? From 6 years ago, was able to like, even though I think I faked it the first 6 months, honestly, I just was like walking into a boardroom and I raised my first seed round ever in my life years ago, 1.5 million in 5 weeks, just by pretending I knew what I was talking about. Because I was going to walk into boardrooms, raise money from men, right? I had to speak their language. So I don't think enough women have that knowledge. Because I talk to more and more. They're doing this pitch like, here's my problem, here's my solution. No, I want to know what you're having. Do you know how to like run your company, instead of me sitting there going, hey, I'm going to take over your company. You're going to run this for 6 months and I got a different formula when you start building traction because you can't do it. So that's the confidence I think we need to be giving to women from day one, is how to take that power and control. And then people know you have it, you'll get funded. Right.
I think that's great. Know your finances is really key. I agree.
Yeah, I agree. Networking, like asking male or female, men or women, angel investors, but asking the question, can you introduce me to someone else? That really helped me. And then I always wanted to meet with that someone else, and I came prepared. So I think coaching women to be prepared for meeting new angel investors, what to say, what to ask. But Terry, I wholeheartedly agree. I think teaching women founders all of those basics of business, they don't necessarily know that. And I think that's what helps with their confidence level when they get in the room pitching.
Yep.
Know your numbers, know the metrics that the angels care about. Why do they invest? Well, yes, they invest in the person and also the idea, but they also invest because you're hitting the right valuation, traction, all those right metrics that they're looking for. And that's super important when you get to the due diligence and the data room discussions, because those are all the questions that people are asking, male
Yep.
or female. And that's what I think puts the female founders at the same level, perhaps, as the male founders that are pitching.
I agree. And so closing off though, Victoria, how did you learn about angel investing? This takes us right into Jennifer's talk. How did you learn?
Sure. Yeah. I would say right now that there are knowledges everywhere. You could definitely learn it yourself by just look at this knowledges. But what I really learned, I felt, is actually through Ken. Because if you just read something, whatever books, if you don't really link that to a real case, you're gonna just forget about it, right? We all learn what like decades in school, but how many you remember if you don't use them in your daily life? So my experience, I wish I should join Ken earlier.
Me too. I agree. Yeah.
that like 1 year learning with Ken is probably worth like 3 to 4 years of learning before Ken, like through all other ways. Even like I'm said, I'm trying to just wear my investor hat, investing with other people's money, but you don't really get to that point. So I reflect upon my angel investing education journey. It is through Ken, that combining all the knowledge we can get from anywhere. You can learn it anywhere, the course as whatever, but it's the real Ken cases together with other experienced angel investors. That's the best learning opportunity.
Just listening too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Thank you, Victoria. And thank you all panelists for joining us today. It was great to hear your perspective, and I wish you all the best in all your businesses and success for the years to come. All right.
Thank you.
I'm going to pass the baton to Jennifer now.
Thanks, Julia. And that was an excellent panel. Great to hear from all of you. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to talk about next steps as an angel investor. So I do have a short presentation, which I will share here, and then take questions from you on how to get involved with angel investing. All right. So I wanted to just start with a bit about Capital Angel Network and why we're here. So our mission is to make Ottawa the best place for all entrepreneurs to launch and scale a global business, and for all qualified investors to access top investment opportunities. And I want to emphasize the word all. I joined Capital Angel Network about 6 years ago, and I was the second woman in the group. So it was a fairly male group at the time, and I'm pretty sure at the time Capital Angel Network had invested in no women-led businesses at the time that I joined. And one of the things that we've learned, I think, in all aspects of business is the more diverse our side of the table is, the more diverse the founders are as well. So if we want to make it the best place for all entrepreneurs and not just half or less than half the entrepreneurs to do business in Ottawa, then we need to get more diversity on the angel side. And we need to show that diversity, and we need to make it more welcoming and inclusive for all entrepreneurs to come to CAN, to pitch and be comfortable at CAN. Sarah mentioned little things like the women are more likely to turn on their cameras than the men. And I think at CAN now we mostly have our cameras on, all of us. When we're listening to pitches, because it just makes it a more personal experience. And that's really important to building up our ecosystem and making sure that all the great ideas have equal access to funding. So now we're about 55 angels in the Ottawa area. We've invested over $40 million in startups in the region. We're over 20% female angels, and this is part of a national trend of that Claudio mentioned in the chat earlier of the number of women angels increasing across the country. And we have about 15 active portfolio companies founded by women, including a couple that were on the panel today. So a big shift in a few years for Capital Angel Network, but still a lot of work to do. As we know, there's still a lot of opportunity to provide more funding to women founders and more opportunities for women who qualify, obviously because it's a regulated area, but to build wealth and increase their portfolios. So, there's been a couple of questions on what is an angel investor. So there is a regulatory requirement to be an angel investor, and this is whether you invest through an angel group, whether you invest on your own, or if you invest in a crowdfunding platform in Canada, you do have to be an accredited investor. So the requirements are that you have either $200,000 in income on your own, or $300,000 in income with your spouse, or $1 million in investable assets, or $5 million in total assets. And the difference between investable assets and total assets is total assets would include your house, which you might not want to invest in your startups, as this is a risky portfolio class. So that's where the difference is between the 1 and the 5. So these are the basic requirements to be an angel investor in Canada. And you do have to sign every time you make an investment that you meet one of these requirements to make that investment. This is separate from the chat discussion and Victoria's comments. Friends and family is a different investment. So if you are a friend or a family member of the founder, you can invest without qualifying financially. You do then have to attest that you are actually a friend or a family member to make that investment. But here we're talking about angels. So why do you want to become an angel? It is definitely investment with impact. You're supporting local founders, or you're supporting, not every investment we make is local, but typically, if you're not investing locally, you're investing along a thesis. So your thesis might be supporting women founders across the country, which we have done. So you might be investing in somebody on the West Coast or the East Coast or the center of the country, but your thesis is women, or you might have a thesis of investing in climate change solutions, and you'll go across geography for that, or investing in health tech. But typically investment with impact, whether you're helping your local economy or helping a class of founder or helping a class of solution across the country. It's super interesting, or at least I find it super interesting. And hopefully you got from the others on the chats that it's really interesting. You get to see a lot of really fascinating ideas from different founders. It's a lot of fun. You get to work with other investors. You get to learn a lot. You learn a lot about the types of businesses that are being created, but also about the fundamentals of investing and business fundamentals as well. And angel investing is not just about writing a check. It's also about mentoring and helping the maturation of a new entrepreneur, helping them with their business opportunity, opening up your network to them, and helping them succeed and scale and get to the next step. And an interesting data point, studies that have been done in Canada and the US show that women angels have a higher rate of return than men, possibly related to, in general, being a little more detail oriented, asking more questions around investment opportunities. And we do need you. We need you to change the game. And we've talked about this. We talked about it yesterday, again today. We'll probably be talking about it for months and years to come. But we really need to get more funding in the hands of women founders. It is really, really hard to scale a company and to become that next, unicorn without funding. And only 2% of the VC funding goes to companies led by female founders. And we know the demand is there. When we did the SheBoot call for applications last year, we got 127, I think it was, applicants for the SheBoot program. The founders exist, they're just not getting funded. And we need to get more women at the table, helping with that funding, opening networks, getting the founders to the next level, helping them get into the VCs for the seed funds and the Series A raises, and then into the big rounds of the Series B, C. And as we get more women angels and you get more exits, we're building up the group of women that are qualified to become partners and managing partners in the VCs and start shifting, who's at the table for the big money in the big funds. So how do you go about becoming an angel? So one option to get started, you can attend a Capital Angel Network session as a guest. We meet once a month. We don't meet in July or December, but otherwise we meet once a month. You can come as a guest, you can see what it's like, you can participate in the discussions. You can audit, follow up with a company and see what the steps are to go through for the due diligence and the investment with companies. We do Angel 101 training, and I think we have one planned for April. So you could attend our next Angel 101 session. That's an hour and a half education session on becoming an angel. You can just join Capital Angel Network and get started, and we do have people that do that. We have an education committee. We run education sessions for our angels. And as well, you can learn from other people within the network. And it's just a great way to get started, because with 55 people, we've got people with a lot of different backgrounds. You can hear the types of questions they ask, the things that they're looking for in deals, things like that. And, so you don't have to make your first investment right away. You join the group, get familiar with it before you start writing checks. You can join SheBoot as an investor, a coach, or a mentor, and get started that way. And we're always looking for more people to help with SheBoot, which we'll be running this fall. The call for applications will be going out next month. So we have announced the third cohort for SheBoot. And that is a women-led business bootcamp that helps women entrepreneurs get investment ready, designed by women investors for women founders. We've talked a bit about the types of things that we do in SheBoot, but it's really around helping to get women funded. So it's not about helping them scale their business or build their business. It's about funding and fundraising and the fundraising process. So it's a good way, if you're not quite ready to commit as an angel, or you're not financially at the stage that you can commit as an angel, you can come into the SheBoot program and help with the SheBoot program, learn more about it. And then when you are ready to be an angel, and make other investments. So just looking at the questions here. So the question about how can I join the network in the 101 session? You can contact myself or Julia, or write to info@capitalangels.ca. That email address is on our website from the contact information. Suzanne Grant is our executive director now, and she can help follow up and get you involved in that. Deborah is recommending you attend a call. I think that's an excellent idea. We are still virtual and will probably remain at least hybrid as we move forward, as the province opens up. There are advantages and disadvantages to being online. One of the advantages is it's much easier to hear from founders across the country because they don't have to travel anywhere. So we found that to be very useful. Sorry, I'm just gonna. And just the last point. So the SheBoot, the bootcamp will run in the fall of 2022. Call for proposals will go out in April. The opportunities are things like mentoring a female founder. If you've got business expertise or technology expertise, we have a variety of different types of mentors. Leading workshops, you can join a shadow board. And if you're an accredited investor, you can invest $10,000 towards the pitch award for the founders. So those are the various ways to get involved in SheBoot. and then different ways to get involved in Capital Angel Network. And I would highly recommend angel investing. It's just such a great way to make a difference. I'm just looking through whether there's questions in here. Feel free to put questions in the chat if you want to know more about angel investing. I think we've got 5 minutes before our keynote with Judy has for a couple more questions. Otherwise, I will fill the void and continue to talk a little bit about angel investing in general. I'm going to just stop sharing my screen. Oops. Press the wrong button. Why can't I? There we go. All right, now I can see better. Yeah, so a couple of things to know about being an angel investor. So the reason you do have to be an accredited investor, so the 200K salary or the $1 million in assets, is that this is a risky asset class. You are investing very early in companies. So it's very rewarding because you're seeing the impact. A small check can make a big difference early in a company, which is not as true if you're investing in the public market. You know, if you're buying a couple of shares in the public market, you're not really impacting the outcome of that company. Hopefully you're making money, but it's not as impactful as when you're investing very early in companies, where you can really make a big difference on whether they succeed or fail, both through your check and through mentoring, participation, and sharing your network. But it is risky. And because of that risk, you do have to be the accredited investor. And one of the things I think, can't remember which one mentioned it, one of the panelists mentioned how important it was to speak to what, I think it was Natalie, speaking about her own leadership style and skill and type of person. One of the really rewarding things about angel investing is you're investing in people. It is the people that are going to make the difference on whether your investment is successful. And spending the time to get to know the founder, you're backing that founder, you're backing that person. And so it really, you know, even when my investments fail, which they will, you know, not all of them, but some of your investments will fail. But I feel good about the investments that didn't make it as well as the investments that did, because I helped someone that I believed in. They were able to take their business a bit further. They learned stuff. Some of them have gone on to found other companies and continued on that journey. You know, so it's very rewarding either way if you're making a decision based on people that you believe in.
Jennifer, Deborah has a good question about the collaborative process of engaging each other, the other individuals that are investing. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So one of the advantages of joining with a group is that you are working with other investors. So, you know, let's say a founder comes in and there's 10 investors that are interested in that investment. So when we then go through the process of what's called due diligence, which is the process of following up, getting to know that company better, you're doing technical due diligence. Is the technology real? You know, if they say they have IP, do they really have it? Are their legal documents in shape? Are their financial documents in shape? You know, are they wanted by the CRA and things like that? So you're doing that side, but you're also doing the softer side. Is the team the right team? Do they have product market fit? Do they treat their customers in the right way? Things like that. And what you're doing with the group is you're getting, you're splitting up the work so you don't have to do it all yourself, which is a huge advantage of a group. And secondly, you're getting different opinions and different eyes on things. So when you're looking at the team, you can have 10 of you have met the team, you can have a discussion about it, you get different people's impressions. I might think someone's great and someone else noticed something that I totally missed in a meeting. So lots of reasons why it's great to have that collective view. And you get people with different backgrounds. So my background is technology. We have, angels with medical background, with development background, life sciences, different areas. So you get expertise in different areas, or finance, legal, et cetera. So that also gives you a much more rounded view, and it makes it more likely that your investments will be successful. And you build up, it builds up your network as well, because you get to know these other angels. So when you meet a new founder and they want help with opening up their network, you've got this great network of angels with all different areas of expertise, and each of them have a network. So it's much easier to then find the right contacts for your founder to move their business forward and move their fundraising journey forward. With that, I think it's time to hand over to our next speaker.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Incredibly insightful presentation, and hopefully we will have many new women angels who join us. It's now my great pleasure to call forward our good friend Manjula, who joins us from CBC to facilitate our next keynote fireside chat. Welcome back, Manjula.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. It's been an exciting 24 hours, the launch of International Women's Week, and thrilled to have you yesterday at the F Factor, and of course here today at our Women Angel Investor Breakfast for our very special concluding guest. I'm going to give you the microphone and let you do the honors of the introduction. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Sonia. Delightful to actually listen to what the process that Jennifer Francis uses to think through what she does. So grateful to be here as well. Really honored to welcome our keynote speaker, Judy Hess. She's the CEO at Copperleaf Technologies, the only Canadian women-led tech company to go public in 2021. Judy, this is going to embarrass you. I have to tell people about some of the things that you've done. I'm sure your name is very familiar to folks, but Judy has been the CEO of Copperleaf since 2009. Under her leadership, Copperleaf was named one of Canada's best managed companies, winner of Canada's most admired corporate cultures, and winner of Tech Culture of the Year. In 2021, she led the successful completion of Copperleaf's IPO on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Before Copperleaf, Judy was the president of Creo Inc., a position she held until Creo was acquired by Eastman Kodak for just under $1 billion US, by the way, in 2005. A couple of other things that I'll add in here. She was recently named one of Canada's most admired CEOs, an Ernst Young Entrepreneur of the Year, a national winner, and winner of the BC CEO Award. There's a ton more things that I can say, but I'm going to start by saying, Judy, good morning. It's so good to have you with us. I think you may be muted.
Muted. Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And yeah, it's a bit embarrassing.
So I could tell you knew I was going to go into that intro and you were doing this. Congratulations on the IPO. What has this year been like for you? You're one of 2 Canadian women to take a company public on the Toronto Stock Exchange.
I didn't really know that statistic, so that's a bit frightening. Yeah, no, it was really quite a whirlwind year. Taking a company public, I would think, is not for the faint of heart. But it was definitely an exciting and very, a process that I really, really learned a lot in, I must say. Creo was a public company as well, but I wasn't the CEO when we took it public. And it's definitely, one step ahead when you're responsible to make sure that this will be successful, and put together your syndicate, lawyers, accountants, and talking to investors nonstop, or potential investors nonstop. And actually having a company and a team, because it's not just about me, really, it was the team that made this possible.
How much harder was the journey to the IPO when you don't have a long lineup of women before you who have done it?
Well, what I would say is it might not be something that you might consider, because maybe that's why there's only 2 women so far that have considered it. You might not consider it unless you see more women in those roles and doing those types of activities with their companies. In my particular case, it was definitely our board, and having a strong board is important. But having a board that said, I think this is something that we should contemplate. And then of course our team looked at it all and decided, okay, I think we should drive that ahead. But you might not consider it, you might look for other ways to raise capital other than the public market that you might feel more comfortable with. But I don't think women should shy away from it.
I've heard you describe the journey as really hard. Tell me a bit about that.
Well, I would just say, it's definitely a lot of work. It's definitely something that you have to put every cell in your body into, I would then say. And I just think that it's a lot of work. You have to really have a great team. You have to really have a great syndicate and supports around you. And, for us, we were, one of the big things is we were under the ASPE accounting standard, and we had to move to IFRS. And if you haven't moved to IFRS already, and you want to go public, you should do that in advance, not like in a month and a half like we did, or whatever it was. Because that was a heavy lift. But I just think it's a lot of work, because you're presenting your company in a way to the market, and you need to make sure, of course, that you can validate every single thing you say. So it really is a lot of work, and you're not sure it's going to be successful either. It's a lot of pressure, because depending on the volatility of the market, you may or may not be able to, after all of that work that you've put in and your team, you still might not be able to go public in the end, depending on factors that might not be even in your control. I remember at the time we were going public in the fall, I woke up and looked at the news, because every day you're looking at the news to see what's happening in the market, to see whether the market window will be open or not. And there was a company called Evergrande that I'd never heard of before, which trashed the market one day. And I was like, what is Evergrande? I've never heard of this company before. It's some development company in China that is affecting my IPO. And I was just wow, this is a very global experience.
You're right. That was around the same time. Oh my gosh. Yeah. What's interesting, just a statistic that I wanted to throw by you. In 2021, just 2.2% of VC funding went to women-founded companies. We're here today to help shine a spotlight on the critical role that women angel investors can play in helping more women founders get funded. What role have women investors played in your business?
Well, in fact, that's an interesting question, because in fact, when I first was raising money, when I joined Copperleaf, one of the things that we had to do was capitalize the company, and I had to raise money. And so I went out looking for money. Now we have to remember that this was in 2009, right after the 2008 complete market crash, and there really wasn't a lot of money available. It was a very difficult job. But it was interesting, because Maria Picella, who at the time was with GrowthWorks and now is with Penderfund, and they are still a big investor in Copperleaf, she was the one that effectively led the group of investors that we had put together to make the investment in Copperleaf. And I think that, I just think that had an influence. And I think Maria looked at it maybe a little bit differently. So I think there's some advantages to have women investors be able to invest. Now, I'm not saying that women investors will always invest in women-led companies or anything like that, just to be clear. But that was a very nice and happy coincidence. And I think she took a bit of a broader perspective and worked a bit more closely with us, getting to know us as she decided whether or not we were the right company to invest in.
What is the key message that you have for women that are listening in today who are looking to become angel investors?
Well, what I would say is, I think it would be something that is a great thing to do. I think that women investors can, I mean, I don't want to, say too much, women investors do this and male investors do this, but you can see where the money goes. And you can see that most of the people that I work with, the people in my syndicate, were mostly men, right? Like when I went public, I'm just saying. So, you know, there's this odd woman, one woman, and the rest will be men. So there's a bias, I think, in society. It might be unconscious, it might be conscious, against women in these types of roles and against women in leadership. You only need to look at the world and the makeup of the world to understand that. And so I think that one thing is, you know, it's a great opportunity. Of course, it's a risky venture, right? But I do think there's, you can get a lot of really positive outcomes if you look at a broader section. I remember Maria, who invested in us, along with a number of other men who also invested in us at the time. But she has mentioned that she was really looking at the team and the CEO and understanding how that team would be able to navigate things. And that's what she was really focused on. Because, you know, there's many ways the business has to move and has to be very agile to find the right market niches and to understand how to really create value for customers and how to grow that business going forward. And it really needs leadership and the right team. And I think that's something that women investors might have a little bit better handle on when they look at companies to invest in. So maybe women investors might even have an advantage there.
You know, I think about your journey from 2009, starting with Copperleaf to this IPO. And I wonder if there are any particular challenges or you know, barriers that you face that you think would be interesting to share as lessons learned with a group of potential angel investors and women leaders.
Yeah, I would say that as I look across Copperleaf and my journey there, one of the things I think that is really, really important, and I think it was really important for Copperleaf's success, is to really focus on fundamentally the culture of the company. Because if you're investing in technology, I think it's really important to understand that it is a human endeavor and a team sport. And a lot of people think technology is about technology, right? And it is, I mean, but as long as you're not defying the laws of physics, you know, a technical problem is much easier to solve than a problem, a human problem. And so building a culture where, and looking for companies that have that culture where you can really get people to work in a team and also to be able to bring them to their potential is something that I think is really critical when you look at that. So I do think that that's a really important part of understanding a company and understanding what's important.
You know, for some reason, I remember reading somewhere that you actually spend time with every employee that comes in. Is that right? Or am I reading that wrong?
Yeah, no, I actually lead the culture course in the company. And I spend the course is about 3 hours long. And I make sure that every single new employee in the company comes through my course.
Wow, that's a culture course. I have to interrupt. I see Sonia kind of nodding and a couple of, what is that? That is fast. You spend 3 hours and you deliver it when this is something that you could, outsource. What is it?
Well, I think it's really different if it comes from the CEO than if it comes from somebody in our company or someone else. Because what it is what is the culture at Copperleaf? How did we build it? Our culture is co-created. Every person in the company has input on the culture. We write it down. It's a bunch of stuff. You have to learn it. You have to practice it. You have to know how important it is. And you have to understand how that culture is connected directly to our success. And it's not only connected to the success and what we do inside the company, it's connected to outside the company. And getting back to your previous question around investors, and lessons learned and things that you could be helpful is to make sure that you are very open with your board, as you work through that, as you are like a CEO, and then the investors, keeping my board, which effectively was my investors, or some of my larger, all representation from my largest investors, I would say, keeping them informed, making sure there are no surprises, and just being that very open person to answer any questions, to give them a lot of exposure to the company. Because I know when I started, I was so busy worrying about raising money at the beginning of Copperleaf. And one thing I think that I had kind of mistakenly missed was keeping the board well informed of what was going on. So I took a very open approach once I realized that. And it's interesting because Maria, who was also on the board and one of our largest investors at the time, talked to me, and I really realized that keeping her and the rest of the board informed, especially in this volatile start of this company when I joined, it was very touch and go as to whether we would even exist. And so keeping everyone informed was really critical for success.
Now, you've mentioned a couple of things that angel investors can offer founders like you. Obviously, a check is nice, but what makes for a great angel investor?
Well, I think someone that, well, okay, there are angel investors that are silent. They don't do anything. They just put money in a company and they move on. There are others who, like Maria or the other people on my board, who joined the board, who really could provide mentoring and input to the CEOs. And I think you can really add value depending on how you choose to make that investment and how you choose to connect with that company or not. I really think that you can add a lot of value from that perspective, because you have a wide perspective. You look at other companies and you can bring as an investor, you can bring other experiences to the table for that company. And I think getting involved and, making sure that employees are, that you understand how important the employees are to this human endeavor, and you make sure that you look after them as an investor, because there are effectively three stakeholders, right? There are investors, there are employees, and there are customers. And these are the three stakeholders that we always have to balance. And I think that's important for investors to understand how they will benefit as well, is by making that company successful and by lending their expertise and support and mentorship is very valuable for the teams.
Now, I'm going to just remind everyone that please, if you have any questions, obviously wealth of expertise here. So I want to make sure that the audience can tap into it as well. I've got a ton of questions. I'm going to keep going, but I'm going to watch the chat very closely to see questions that come up. And I want to talk a little bit about opportunities for women in tech, because that's been, well, first of all, the month it is, International Women's Day is around the corner. Just yesterday, during the launch of International Women's Week, we talked about some of the really alarming statistics on this front. Here are just a few. I've got several, but here are a few. Just 4.8% of CEOs of Toronto Stock Exchange listed company are women. 53% of tech companies have no women executives. Women comprise 8% of boards of directors in Canadian tech, and 73% have no women board members. Why do you think, this is a big question, it's certainly an issue. I want to try to unpack, and I don't want to take up too much time, but I'm curious to hear your point of view on this. Why do you think we continue to struggle with this, with women and women leaders in the tech ecosystem?
Well, I think that tech I don't even know how it happened, but somehow tech got totally branded male in a lot of ways, and I think that's a lot due to the fact that, and it's interesting because when I was going through school, it was kind of before tech was anything. And I didn't have that impression at all when I was in university. At the University of Waterloo, I didn't feel like, although I noticed that there weren't that many women in math, and in computer science, but I did understand that I didn't understand it that clearly. I think it happened later, and it kind of got branded male. Like you can think of it, nursing is kind of branded female. Now there are some male nurses around, but it's certainly a minority. And I think it kind of got that branded that way. And in the end, you know, if you look at tech, okay, it kind of got branded male. Those are the role models for everyone to get into tech, right? And therefore, I think it's harder and for women to see themselves in that industry. I think some people, that's why I always emphasize that it's a human endeavor and a team sport, because that is something that I think women have a lot of value and could see themselves in. But if you see yourself as sitting in front of a computer and just typing away in a closet and doing coding or something like that, which is a very small part of the job in a way when you are a software developer, but you know, you might not see that that's something that is welcoming to you. If I just even look at software development, and I know there's tech a lot more than just software development, but I think that's part of it. So I think in the end, in a man's world of leadership, because look at your statistics, you know, and you don't even see women leaders in those companies, you know, and then you have a male kind of, a field that's kind of painted male. It's going to be hard to do that until we get more role models of women. Now, I see changes, right? I see a lot of changes since, you know, when I started out in my career, I would always be the only woman in the room. Always. You know, I always used to joke that the women's washroom was my office because I would be the only one in there. And I could, you know, it was a free-for-all in there with me, myself, and I. But the men's washroom is the washroom we used to get, you know, a lineup, which is a really, you know, strange thing to think about. But it is a man's world, so we really need to change it. There's nothing that should bar women from getting in tech, investing in tech, leading tech companies, or leading, period. I just, you know, I think that that's something that's really critical. And we've come so far. We really have come so far. So I don't want to belittle that. I mean, I know there's lots of places in the world where women have not come so far. Yeah. And I understand that there are countries where that's a challenge, but certainly in Canada, let's say, I think we have great opportunities here. We just have to provide more role models, and more people have to go out there and just do it.
So Judy, because you're not seeing these comments, I have to, you've kind of uncovered something here. So I'm going to read off some comments to you. It's time to change how startups make sure they're all gender informed. That's from Cindy. And Cindy's actually suggested a book called Invisible Women, Data World Designed, I think is the name of the book that she's put in there. Jennifer agrees with you, and she's got a question. She says, how do you think we can shift the message in high schools to women to see women like you as a possibility?
Yeah, well, I think a really great thing to do would be to go and talk to those kids in high school, and you know, so that they could see that women do this, and that they could make that connection. You know, a lot of times when I used to do actually quite a bit of speaking in high schools. I haven't recently. I don't know why that is. Maybe. But, you know, there used to be all these different things. Well, I guess when my kids were in high school, I would go and talk to the high school and stuff like that. Maybe that's why. But, you know, I did do that. I also talked to some graduating classes and stuff like that. I think it's important that women investors, women who are in high tech, make themselves available to this and really change that. And you know, there could be various things that government and provincial governments you know, could do to support that as well. And you know, there are all these, you know, tech camps for women and all these things that are going on now that you see. But I do think that if we could put part of our time into that, I think we could make a difference.
I'll just read off Sonia saying that she loves the drive to inspire more women in high schools. I have to agree to Judy. I think that that's a really captive audience. And I think it's a point where you can actually inflect things differently. Sonia says, oh, Invest Ottawa is bringing our Women Leading in Smart Mobility event to high schools in Ottawa. It's something new that they're trying. And there was a comment earlier about this collaborative culture. Judy, I love that idea. I think I might even take it back to our organization. What a great, Julia says, what a great way to work. People definitely take it seriously when the CEO gives the introduction to culture. And Nadia has a question. What advice would you give to females in startups on how to develop mentorship and sponsorship relations? Maybe women can promote women.
Yeah, so that's a hard thing, women promoting women. That's something that I've always never understood in my career. Maybe you guys out there will understand it better than me. But one thing that I think is, I really love and really admire and respect James Baldwin, and he said, we're formed by what we see. And that statement really struck me because I didn't understand why women don't support women more. You see it all over the world. You can see it in politics, you can see it in business, you can see it in companies. And I really never understood that, but I think it's in the basis of, this comment by James Baldwin, because when we see men in leadership, whether we're men or women, we think that men should be in charge. And it isn't always that women support women. I support women, but I think that women have to take that conscious step of supporting other women. And it's not natural for women or men to support women in leadership. I just don't think it's not what I expected my entire career. I'm just, I'm really surprised by that, but I think the only way to understand it is through James Baldwin.
Yeah, I think that quote speaks volumes about a lot of issues that we're facing. Carolina, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Apologies if I'm not. She has a question. What advice would you give young women professionals who aspire to hold a position of leadership as yourself?
Oh my gosh, well, just do it. Say yes every time someone offers you an advance, even if you think you're not ready for it. I always find this amazing because, I've hired a lot of people into positions of leadership. And, when you look at a male candidate and a female candidate, a lot of times the female candidate is like, well, I haven't really done that before. I don't know if I'm ready for that. Kind of thing. And the male candidate is like, can do it. And actually the female candidate is more qualified in my opinion. So I think women themselves have to put themselves out there. You have to take some risk, you have to be determined. You're going to make mistakes, but it's how you get up after, and go forward after a mistake. I think just that confidence level, women have to have that risk taking and that confidence level. I think you should put yourself out there and you should really go for it. And you should do it in your own way. You don't have to act like a man to be a leader. You can just act like a female and be a female leader or however you are individually, right? So I think that's really important. You can show vulnerability. I mean, you don't always have all the answers. It's okay to say, I don't have all the answers. So I really think that is really important. And sometimes I think it's overlooked.
So a couple of, wow, there's so many comments here. I'm just going to quickly say to the audience that Julia has recommended a program called STEM Minds for young women. And there's another one that I saw that's called the U Power Project. Another one that it's a tech startup camp recommended by Cindy. Just some things, if you have young women in your life, hey, this could be a better gift than, I don't know, whatever else you were thinking of getting them. Victoria, I'll give you 1 minute to answer this question. And I have one other last thing to ask you. Victoria has this question. I think this is important. How do you think influential women like you can help influence the culture in terms of gender equality, especially promoting for more women to share the family burden with women? And you know that this is a gap that's been really highlighted by the pandemic?
Yeah, so when I got married, I was very, very particular. And I said, I'm not doing all the work here because there's a lot of work in this household. Running a household is a lot of work. So I said, you are responsible. I'm making you, my husband, the vice president of food systems. That doesn't mean that you just, I figure everything out. I buy all the ingredients and you do the barbecuing. That is not food systems. It's an entire system. So you must figure out what to make for all the food in the house. You must go and buy it. You must make it and you must clean it up. That's what food systems is. It is a complete system, right? And the reason, and I said, I'll be responsible. I'll be the vice president of, cleaning and household systems. So if you want to outsource your part of the work, go crazy. I'm outsourcing my part of the work.
Has he made EVP in any of those areas yet? No, no. Okay. Last question for you, and I'm oh gosh, you're so great. I'd love to keep this going for another hour. What happens now with the company? You have this IPO money. In a minute. What's next?
Well, what's next is like our vision at Copperleaf is to transform how the world sees value. And that's about getting the DNA of ESG into decision-making as well as financial in decision-making in large corporations. So, a lot of our clients are racing to the energy transition, net zero, climate adaptation, and we do, decision analytics. So we're helping them get there. So we really want to make an impact on the world at Copperleaf, and we really want to make a difference. Right now, we're over 1 billion in market capitalization. Now we want to be, our next big, hairy, audacious goal is to be over 1 billion in revenue. So we have a long way to go.
We'll be watching. Judy, it's such a pleasure chatting with you. I'll just say, I think I say this for everyone, that I just find it astounding that you just think that you went ahead and you did your job and you led a company. And meanwhile, what you've really done is paved the way for a lot of women. So thank you again. And I think I speak for the audience when I say that. And Sonia, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you both so much. Judy, you're such an inspiration. Thank you for your leadership. I truly believe, as Jennifer says, if you see her, you can be her. You are helping to chart a path for so many women tech leaders and women business leaders. Thank you for being with us. It's very early in BC. She joined us at 7 a.m. Pacific. Thank you for being a part of this, Manjula. It's always a joy to collaborate with you. Thank you for being a champion. I do want to do a special shout out to our friend Jill Earthy, who is CEO of NBC, an incredible new fund in British Columbia, who helped to facilitate and bring us together with Judy this morning. She's a big champion for us at Invest and here in Ottawa. And also wanted to let everyone know that we do have NACO with us, and there is a special Global Capital Summit taking place virtually on March 22nd and 23rd. Claudio, if you want to drop something into the chat to help everyone give a link on how they can be a part of that. If you're looking to learn more about this broad field, please take a peek. And of course, the biggest call to action this morning is we would love for those women who are with us today to become a part of the Capital Angel Network, to get involved in She Boots. So many different ways to support, as Jennifer noted, Go Sports, mentorship, being an investor. And of course, we supported Invest Ottawa women in a variety of ways. We will be sharing today's broadcast broadly across all of our social networks with those calls to action and your opportunity to get engaged, bring us more women founders so we can propel forward on that goal of helping to create more women entrepreneurs who take on the world with great investors like you all. Thank you, Jennifer and Julia, for your incredible leadership and all of your collaboration. And thank you for being a part of today. Wishing everyone a great day. Stay healthy and safe.